What's up, everybody? Ryan Thomas live on another Sunday episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm joined by an awesome guest, Game On Sports, Game On Buffalo, Timothy Sugrue. What's going on, Tim? How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a little bit since the second Buffalo Podathon, since we met at Rusty Buffalo in West Seneca. I met you and a few of the other guys. Brandon, I had on the show. The other gentleman, you guys, we had a real good interaction at that event, and I thought to myself, I got to get these guys on my show. I like what you guys have been doing.
No, yeah, the other guy is Marty Finucane.
Okay.
The three of us work for Game On, and it was really cool to be at the Podathon. And we just got to meet a bunch of different people and support a good cause in BB&G Charities.
Right, and I think that's the main thing. You're supporting a good cause, but you're also meeting a lot of cool people that you can definitely build some really great friendships with. And I want to kind of dive into what you've had going on. It's very rare that I click the Instagram icon on my phone and Game On Buffalo or Game On Sports doesn't pop up. For the viewers and listeners of the show, tell us a little bit about Game On Sports and some of the events that you guys have been doing, within the last, few months or so.
Yeah, sure. So Game On Buffalo or Game On Sports, we've been around since 2008. I've been playing in the league since 2009, 2010, and I started working for Game On Sports around 2015. We do sports from everything: co-ed touch football, we do slow pitch softball, kickball, golf, pond hockey, floor hockey, indoor football, pretty much anything sports related we run within the area. And our main goals, as much as people love being competitive and playing sports, the biggest thing that we push is you're going to meet new people, especially if you're new to the area. It's a great way to get involved. It's basically like a big family.
Right.
And within each of its the own sports, kickball is its own family, football is its own family. I've had people who were at my wedding that I didn't know before I started playing with Game On Sports.
That's awesome.
It's just a great way to meet people, and I have lifelong friends from having played in it.
That's really great. And I see a lot of the competitiveness in those two-hand touch football games, and I see a lot of the big highlight plays. You guys kind of post like these highlight reel plays of a real nice throw or a real nice catch. There's some athletic talent out on those fields, I must say.
Yeah, so as much as it is about making friends, it is incredibly competitive at times. We have, especially for football that you mentioned, we have 4 different divisions that go from people who are just beginning all the way up to, I've been playing in this league for 10 years. I'm trying to win every game possible. I'll have a beer with you at the bar afterwards, but when we're on the field, I want to smash your face in. So.
I love that. That's a good mentality to have. And you mentioned that you've had some people at your wedding, based on your relationships, that you've built from this journey that you've been on. That's pretty awesome. And I think that's one of the huge dynamics that I love about this whole podcast world and just the culture of Buffalo itself is that not only is it the city of quote-unquote good neighbors, but when you have entities like Game On Sports, Game On Buffalo in particular, Buffalo's a sports town, so it's always embraced sports. Sports has always been embraced by the people, I should say, so you're kind of striking while the iron's already hot, if you will, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is a sports town. People love their sports here, their football, their hockey.
Right.
So going along with that, there's, it's no coincidence that people who love watching sports also like playing sports.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, do you guys have like age divisions, or is it just all kind of mixed into one?
So it's all mixed into one. We've tried to do a 35 in older league, but what we found is that people who are that age and are still playing are also still very good. So there's, it's kind of hard to have just a whole division of those people all still playing.
Right. Yeah, that's it. The competitiveness. I mean, if I were to tell anyone to go on Instagram and follow you guys on Instagram, they would see just these little clips of these awesome moments in these games where there's one-handed catches or catches over the shoulder or beautiful rainbow passes. It's like you can tell that at one point or another, everybody that's been playing at your events played, whether it was high school or college, and probably played at a high level.
So we've had some people. I think Joe Licata played a season with us.
That's awesome.
And so we've had some people who have played at certainly the collegiate level, and for him, he was, on a pro roster at one point. So, but I don't want it to scare anybody away. If you've never picked up a football, but you like the sport and you're interested in playing, maybe you never had an opportunity in high school or you played soccer.
Right.
Honestly, it doesn't matter. Just get out there and play and have fun.
Right.
We've had people who, like they said, I've never played organized sports in my life. This is the first time I've done that, who have gone from that to now, just absolutely loving playing the game. And we find that a lot of that is floor hockey. We have people who have never played ice hockey or never held a stick, but they love the sport. So sure, I'll get out there and I'll give it a try. And they find out that they love it. And it's another spot where just friendships are made.
Right. And I think there's a lot of reasons why someone might not have played a certain sport. Not many people even really know this, but I didn't even play football in high school, and it's my favorite sport. And the main reason why I didn't play it was because I knew the coaches, and I knew what type of coaches they were, and I just kind of didn't really want to be a part of that. I played baseball and I wrestled instead for that lone reason, really. And I look back on high school and I'm like, man, I wish I would have played, but I didn't really want to be involved with those coaches, and I liked the coaches of the other sports, and I liked the teammates I had on the other sports. So that could be a reason in of itself why maybe somebody might not play a sport in high school, but, in their mid-20s or early 30s, they might say to themselves, well, I'll give this a shot now, or even in their 40s or 50s, say that they'll give it a shot. So it's really an awesome dynamic that you guys have, because there's people out there that haven't really had that competitive fire lit in that way, and you guys kind of light it for them in a fun, innovative way. So I definitely enjoy that very much so.
Oh yeah, the high school coaches, and it is very much politics when it comes down to that type of stuff. So
right.
I can totally see being, hey, that's not someone I want to play for. I played in high school. I loved it. I cried after our last game, knowing that I was never going to put the helmet and shoulder pads on again. But knowing, you have intramurals in college, but it's one of those things where once that's done, where do you go? And, that's just kind of the opportunity that we provide for people.
Right. Yeah, I was so lost in my seniors night, just the pageantry of it, where you get a bouquet of flowers and give them to your mom, and your mom's crying, and then your dad's like, hey, go out there and have a good match. And it's like, well, my mom's crying, and I go out, wrestle my last match, proceed to not do so well. And luckily there was another tournament after that for me to redeem myself, but I couldn't focus on the task at hand because my mom was just like proud and all that. And it was tough for me to get that primal wrestling instinct when your mom is there watching you wrestle. So it was pretty funny, but yeah, I could definitely imagine that you're the type of guy that, and I understand it. You're dedicated to sports, and you want to definitely promote sports in a way that helps others, because I think that's the biggest thing with sports is that, as you said, there's reasons why someone might not play something that could have nothing to do with the sport itself. And you guys are getting those people out there and saying, hey, just come out, just interact with, the people that are playing and build some awesome friendships.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are, they're really good at coaching people up and taking on, free agents that, just signed up as an individual and just looking for a team to play on. And, they'll take take them under their wing and just kind of show them the ropes of, what everything's all about. one guy who plays in our leagues, Chris Mecker, is really good at that. He's always willing to pick up free agents, bringing new people into the league and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
But circling back, so for you, for wrestling, it must have been awesome as UFC became popular, within the last 10 to 15 years, being someone who wrestled in high school. And, once that's done, there's the Olympics, and then what else is there? But now that UFC is as popular as it is, it's awesome for people who wrestled in high school. Maybe it's another direction that they can go in once they're done playing, once they're done competing.
Right. Yeah. That's I couldn't have said it any better. Yeah, that's part of the reason why I got into it. I actually, my freshman year, my sophomore year, I was a weight room junkie. I was in the weight room a lot, and I would spend a lot of time in there just lifting weights and trying to stay in as good a shape as possible, which is really hard to believe now. But
yeah,
but
I think a lot of us could say that.
Right. I mean, 27 now. You got to try to be a little bit physically active. But man, I go to the Y, 4 days a week, and I cannot do the things that I used to be able to do. It's pretty depressing. But
yeah. I mean, especially in high school, it's like, well, I'm already here. I might as well go to the gym. It's open. It's free.
Right.
But now it's like, well, I got to pay. I got to get up in the morning and go. I can sleep. So
yeah, I was already there, and I thought, well, I'll just kill some time between classes and whatever, because I was, at that time, I had like these little breaks. If instead of going to lunch, I'd go to the weight room, and my priorities were a lot different then. I was trying to, meet girls and all that stuff that kids in high school care about back then. But
oh my God, we could go down a rabbit hole if we want to do that. But it's funny though, because even lifting in high school, I look back on it, and I'm 32, and I'm sure it's a little bit true for you as well. But you look back on what they were teaching us in gym, and it was do bench press, do squats, and do some curls. But there was, even now you look at all the programs that are out there for, training and stuff, and it's just like, man, why wasn't I doing that in high school? Like, I would have been so much further along.
Right.
Just doing, maybe what they were trained to do in the 50s and 60s, and that's what our coaches were teaching us at the time.
Right, yeah, they were just teaching you, hey, do as many reps with as much weight in 30 seconds as possible, just like basic circuit training. And now there's the elastic bands, and there's yoga, and there's I take a body combat class where you basically, you're punching the air, and you're kind of moving around as if you're fighting someone else, but you're not. And I wish I would have even had stuff like that in high school. Obviously you don't want to promote like fighting or anything like that, but just like simulated stuff where it's you versus you, and rather than just laying on a bench and lifting the bench bar,
something to change up 3 sets of 10 for pretty much everything that you do.
Right.
Seemingly what they taught us at the time.
Right.
Whereas now, like you said, there's, you could name off countless DVDs or workout programs, but yeah, just where it's, it's mixed martial arts is the workout, and it's great. It kicks your butt, and you're not doing anything that involves any sort of weight. It's just your own weight that you're moving around.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the only sports really, and I hate to say this, but I think it's true. I think there's a lot of sports where you can have co-ed, like you guys have co-ed stuff, but I mean, as far as like training to get in really good shape, I can say that when I've had any sort of boxing or wrestling or a little bit of jiu-jitsu practice, the toughest training partner, or whatever you want to call it, has been a female. 10 times out of 10, because they want to prove that they are just as strong and just as tough and just as nasty as the other guy that they're going against. And I remember having some just wars with this girl that was on the wrestling team and another girl that was in one of my wrestling classes. She was an animal, and she was tough, so that, I think mixed martial arts is one of those sports where you can actually, in training, you can kind of, there's more of an openness to inviting everybody. And I think that sports in general are getting that way, which is great, because I feel like the days, as you said, in high school, they would literally split my gym in half, put girls on one side, put guys on another, and now it's kind of just, blended together, which is a good thing, I think.
Yeah, and it should be that way. So we have, we're part of an overall network that we have in terms of other, cities and areas that run social sports leagues. And the one woman from Toronto is a big proponent of that, where, hey, the girls are just as good at these sports, and, just pushing equality and stuff in the sports world. She's a big proponent of it, and I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I think that that's awesome, and I think that it's only good for everyone. So I definitely appreciate her doing that, and shout out to Toronto. That's one of my favorite cities. So, it's one of those cities too where they have their sports are very. It's such a massive hockey city that can't even skip over that. But I feel like football is getting a little bit bigger in Toronto, and I actually posted something the other day about, maybe by possibility of 2028, they're saying that the NFL could expand and Toronto might get an NFL team. So
yeah, and I know that's been talked about for years. I've been a season ticket holder of the Bills since I think 2006.
Oh, wow.
And, when they had the Toronto series up there, I think if they had their own team, they would support it as much as they do hockey. But, I don't know how well they would support it.
Right.
Because I just feel like if the team is bad and the hockey is going on, I don't know how much they're going to care about the National Football League.
Right.
Personally, that's just how I see it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think it's one of those cities that I could say maybe the fans would show up for the other teams, which is never a good thing, but it's I don't know, it's such a big city.
When the Jays are not doing well, that's what happens with the Red Sox and the Yankees. I remember taking a bus from UB to go up and watch a Red Sox game, and the stadium was pretty full on like a Wednesday night. Right. I don't know how often it is. If the Rays are there, it's probably like maybe a handful of people.
Right, like 12,000 people, if that, maybe 8,000. Yeah, it's such a beautiful place, Rogers Center. I really like it. It's a good place to watch a game, and they I think in a couple years, as far as Blue Jays fans, I think with the young talent they have, they'll be out showing up for their team. But right now, I watched actually the Blue Jays-Yankees game the other day, and even for a Yankees-Blue Jays game, it really wasn't that full. So, I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, as far as what you were saying about MMA and wrestling, the main reason why I kind of got into it, I wanted to get into shape, and I wanted to test myself in that way. And my dad wrestled, and he was a pretty good wrestler that had his career cut short due to injury, and he said that he wanted me to get into it, and I just said, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And unbeknownst to me, I was pretty good at it. Wasn't great, but for somebody that got into it kind of late, I did pretty well. And that's a kind of a story that kind of molds into your brand, is that no matter how late you think you're getting into a sport, it's never too late, because on one hand, you're putting yourself out there, putting your athletic talent out there to be seen by your peers and by your teammates or whatever, and you're also getting the opportunity to meet new people. I think that, as you said, that's the biggest thing, is that you've been able to meet new people from your games that you've played in, and I've been able to meet people. You're always able to meet new people when you put yourself out there in any way. So I think that that's really awesome. Couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. Look, if both of us weren't doing podcasts, we probably never would have met. So
right.
There's that. So if you're willing to put yourself out there, part of it is meeting new people and making new friends and new relationships.
Right. Yeah, and it was cool because I was kind of standing there at the bar there in West Seneca, Rusty Buffalo, and I kind of turn around and I'm like, who are these three guys? They look like they're cool fellas. So I started chatting with you guys, and I'm like, wow, these guys have like a brand where they have these people meet up for sports games, and it's pretty awesome. It's unique because I feel like we need that right now. We need that right now in our society where I hate to say it pains me to say it, but I have cousins that are, 10, 12, 13, 14, and they're addicted to their tablets. They're addicted to their cell phones. They're addicted to Netflix and Hulu, where when I was that age, I was playing 5 sports at one time.
Yeah,
so
I was playing on 3 different baseball teams during one summer.
Right.
Where if I didn't have a game for the other 2, I was playing for the third team.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, I know. I totally get that. And look, e-games is becoming a very, very popular thing. So you have a lot of people who are doing that as well. And, a part of us is, what we want to do is also get people off the couch and, get outside and be active. And, there's a health promotion to it as well.
Oh, for sure. And I actually just saw that they did the e-sport, e-game championship event. And the kid that won, he won the Fortnite championship. And I kid you not, this trophy was far better looking than the Vince Lombardi trophy. No disrespect to football, but it made me kind of laugh to myself that this guy's sitting in a recliner in front of a stadium of 70,000, maybe even more than that, 100,000 people. And he wins this Fortnite championship, and they gave him this trophy that looked like it looked like he had won the Super Bowl. There was confetti coming down. It was just, I don't know. I'm scared.
On top of the $3 million that they gave him as well, which is I think it was what he won when he finished first.
He actually ended up with $6 million. They said the $3 million.
Holy cow.
Yeah, he got $3 million for the tournament, and then he got $3 million in based on the endorsements and all the stuff that he had, being that it was on, I think it was on ESPN or something like that. And on one hand, it's cool. I think that's neat in its own way, but on another, it's just like, man, I feel like we're ignoring the issues at hand, where obesity is at such a high rate, and younger kids.
It's funny though that kid wasn't obese though.
No, he wasn't. He was a twig. Right? Yeah, he was a twig. That's true, but I don't know. I see that though. Do you agree with me? You kind of see that?
Yeah, there's 2 sides to it. I played a lot of video games as a kid, but I was also active. I think there's a balance between the 2 of them.
For sure.
I stopped playing because I think this came up. I think Josh Rest, who's part of your guys' group, mentioned it on Twitter. He was talking about Madden, and I'm like, the last time I bought it was 2007, and I've been making the same trade with the Patriots for Lawrence Maroney for the last 13 years. I played video games a lot as a kid, and it is funny to see how far it's come since playing, NFL Quarterback Club 99.
Oh,
to think that someone could be, competing in a tournament for millions of dollars playing a game that I, in my parents', basement played as a kid, which is just remarkable.
Yeah, on one hand, it shows that side of society and technology and all that is really awesome, how far it's grown. But on another, like you said, you got to have that balance where you're playing stuff, but you're also active, and you're also, making sure that you're meeting people through sport or through any other way of being active. So, that's definitely a big topic for sure that is evolving as such. So, I wanted to pick your brain a little bit. You mentioned that you've been a Bills season ticket holder since 2006, right?
Yeah, so it was my sophomore year of college. My buddy Sam, who's a Jets fan from Queens, was like, hey, what do you think about getting Bills season tickets next year? And he's like, absolutely. Let's do it. He's like, when am I ever going to be, especially coming from New York and growing up in Queens, he's like, when am I ever going to be able to pay? I think it was a little bit over $300 at the time for season tickets to a Bills, to see 8 NFL games. He's like, I couldn't even fathom doing that if being in New York City. So yes, absolutely. Let's do it. So me, him, and one of my other buddies got season tickets, and I've gone from sitting by myself to now we have a group of 14 of us that all sit together.
Wow, that's really awesome. That's so cool.
But I didn't grow up necessarily a Bills fan. I grew up in Albany, came to Buffalo when I went to UB, and I stayed here afterwards. But, I bounced around as to what team I was a fan of. At a young age, I was probably a Seahawks fan, a Lions fan, then a Bills fan. And then at some point, I settled on, I was a Buccaneers fan growing up.
Oh, wow.
Probably until my sophomore year of college when, I kind of just fell in love with the Bills and fell in love with the city and just the area. But, yeah, if you want to know anything about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers between the years of 1998 to 2005, I could probably tell you a lot about them.
Well, yeah, you could tell me definitely a lot about John Gruden during his time there. I mean, they won a Super Bowl. Tony Dungy went to Indy, and then they traded for John Gruden, and then they won the Super Bowl, and then it was almost like in the blink of an eye, John Gruden was gone after that Super Bowl run. They just were a disaster after that.
Yeah, I mean, they had a lot of seasons where they kind of, they just were middle of the pack. They didn't do anything, impressive. They had some QB troubles. Chris Sims had his appendix removed because he had that weird injury where, he was going to be, I ended up being in the NFL for a while after that, but seemingly at the time was going to be the next quarterback for the Buccaneers. Yeah. And then he had that injury, and then it kind of just fell apart for them after that. They could never really find anyone to fit that mold. I think they had Brian Greasy was their quarterback there for a while.
Yeah, they kind of patched it with vets.
Spent a season as their quarterback. So.
Right. Yeah, that was a really interesting time because I remember Chris Sims because he's obviously Phil Sims' son, and now Chris Sims is this analyst. He's everywhere. I see him all over the place on Twitter or Instagram. He's always doing an interview with somebody, and I thought to myself, what happened in his career that caused his career to just end? And then I looked it up and I actually saw the hit that apparently caused the injury, and I mean he was upended. It was not a good. I mean, these guys really do risk a lot, and when you have certain players asking for more money, on one hand you're like, come on, you're making enough, but then on another it's like they really do. Their bodies are changed forever once they're done playing.
Yeah, I see both sides to that argument. They got to get their money while they can, but at the same time, how much is it a detriment to your team and the success of your team?
Right.
I obviously can't speak to it because I don't play in the NFL, and I'm not putting my body at risk like that anymore.
Right.
So I could see, maybe their teammates seeing both sides of it as well. Like, hey, I understand, I got to pay him. But at the same time, if he's not here, he's not helping us, and I want to win a Super Bowl. So there's, both sides of that equation. That it's a tricky balance for sure.
And if you win a Super Bowl, you'll get more money than what you even want. So I mean, that's how I see it.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't talk over it. Or if you win a Super Bowl, the city that you're in will probably love you for the rest of your life.
Right. You won't have to buy a drink if Josh Allen wins the Super Bowl for the Buffalo Bills. He'll be getting free drinks anywhere he goes in Western New York.
Oh, for the rest of his life.
Right. Even his grandson will probably get free drinks for the rest of his life too. But you say now that you're a Bills fan, and I like the journey. You ended up going to UB. Shout out to UB. Go Bulls. You went to UB, graduated there, and you decided to stay here. What was it that made you decide to stay here? I'm curious to know that story too.
So my mom grew up in North Tonawanda, so I have a bunch of aunts and uncles and cousins in the area. And then my brother, Dave, he lives maybe less than 5 miles from UB, so he raised his family here. So I have a lot of family in the area, which made the decision to stay easy. But at the same time, going back for summers at Albany, I always was drawn towards Buffalo, and I love the area. I love the passion that the people have. I love having two major sports teams here. I think sometimes people do take that for granted. Whenever I would hear people say, the Bills should move, it would be better for the area. And I'm like, I disagree with that completely.
It'd be horrible for the area.
Yeah. Just even in terms of, the morale of people love the Bills here, and having a major sports franchise like that, you don't know until it's not there anymore. And it's, how often can I go downtown and go to a hockey game? Like, that's just something you can't do if you're living in an area like Albany. There's no big colleges there. There's no major sports teams. Everyone there is either, they're just split up in terms of who they're rooting for, whether it's Mets, Yankees, Jets, Giants, Boston Red Sox, or Patriots, and you get the random Steelers or Bills fan there. But there's no, fan base that everyone's rallying around. It's just, it's something that people shouldn't take for granted here in Buffalo.
Right. I remember really vividly, I was actually in a study hall in high school. It was my freshman year, and it was around the time there was the rumblings that they were going to do the Toronto deal. It was like 2006. There was rumblings that potentially within the next year or two, Buffalo could be playing games in Toronto, whether it was one game or two games. And I literally looked to one of my best friends. Actually, I just saw him last night, and I said to him, he was sitting next to me, and I'm like, this is the beginning of the end. And he was like, what do you mean? And I said, if they move there, or if they play a game there and it's successful, and Ralph Wilson starts to listen to some offers, they are gone. Like, there was no Terry Pegula back then. I didn't even know who Terry Pegula was. No one knew who Terry Pegula was back then. Maybe people at Penn State did, but no, I did not know. Did you know who Terry Pegula was in 2006?
No idea until he bought the Sabres.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure other billionaires knew who he was because he was filthy rich. But,
right.
No one had any idea that guy was going to sweep in and not only by the Sabres, but also by the Bills. And I just, you can never thank the guy enough for keeping both of those franchises here.
Right.
I think people forget how, that feeling of every year, are they going to move? Are they going to go someplace else? And I just feel awful for the fans in San Diego and Oakland, and, having their teams, being moved away like that is just, it's got to be heartbreaking, especially for San Diego. I know Oakland's bounced around here and there over the years, but the Chargers have been in San Diego for as long as I can remember.
Yeah. Oh, I think around 50, 60 years. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that would have been a real dark day. I mean, the Bills were less than mediocre at that point. They had a lot of really bad seasons in the early, 2000s leading up. They had the drought, obviously, at that time still. So them moving would have just been a huge dark cloud, I think, over the city. And you mentioned the Sabres, too. The Sabres were really close to being out of the NHL, not once but twice within this century, within the last 20 years. They almost moved, and I couldn't imagine that. I couldn't imagine going downtown in downtown Buffalo with no hockey buzz. It wouldn't be Buffalo.
You can't even imagine it.
Right.
Like, it's just because it's been, especially for people who grew up in the area, it is, it's been a part of their entire lives to, if anything like that ever went away, it would just be devastating.
Right. As far as, you're Bills fandom now, you're a Bills fan, and you're one Buffalo guy through and through, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I bleed blue and red. I can probably tell you the specific moment when I decided I'm going to start rooting for the Bills. And in the middle, and it didn't seem like it was going to go on for as long as it did, this drought that they were in the middle of. But I was at my brother's house watching Sports Center, and flashes on of teams on the uprise, and they showed J.P. Lossman throwing a deep ball for a touchdown to, it was either, I don't know if Molds was on the team, but who was their
Lee Evans,
yeah.
Yep.
And they're like, so between J.P. Lossman, Lee Evans, and whoever they're running, it was probably Travis Henry at the time, and they're like, this team is on the rise. They just won 5 straight games to finish the end of the season and finish 7-9. Look out for them in the next season. And I remember thinking, like, all right, I'm here in Buffalo. I'm going to start rooting for this team. And it took a while, but they eventually made the playoffs. That was it was like 2006, 2007. So almost 10 years later, it was tough at times, but I loved going to the games. Just the environment around the stadium, there's nothing like it anywhere else. I think the closest that I've come is maybe being at a tailgate for, the Tennessee Volunteers, or I went to Georgia for a game down there when UB went down there. That's the only thing that I've seen that's even resembled what it's like being around New Era Field on game day.
As far as your thoughts on the current state of the team, where are you at? You started following the team when they had really closely when they had JP and Lee Evans, and then you waited 10 years for that playoff berth. What are your thoughts on the current state of the Bills?
So probably about the same as it was then. I'm optimistic. I think I've thought that way every season. I don't like to think of them as being, a 5-11 team. I could just never vision that personally. I always see them as being, the players that they've drafted or picked are going to work out, and they're going to make the playoffs. And I actually, I've said that every year, but I definitely feel like that's the case this year. I feel like the running back that they drafted, Devin Singletary, is going to be a stud in the league. I just, even just watching highlights of him and then watching him, play in the preseason, aside from how many yards he gained, or you just saw the way he moved when running the football, and I can just see that translating to being someone who's going to do well in this league. I
love how they have a rookie come in, and they have the most successful active running backs, career running backs on one, Frank Gore and LaShawn McCoy. Literally, there's been no tandem in NFL history that has rushed for as many yards as those guys have. Shady, I think, is close to 12,000, and Frank Gore is like 500 yards away from passing Barry Sanders for third all time.
Which is incredible.
Right.
Because where was he? He was with the Dolphins last year, right?
He was with the Dolphins, and they had a piss poor offensive line. Like it's not even an exaggeration in saying that. And he averaged 4.2 yards a carry. Over 700 yards. It's pretty good.
Successful every year of his career,
right?
That he's been healthy. And it's funny, even if you talk about that same year when the Bills, with J.P. Lossman and Travis Henry, Frank Gore was the star on the 49ers at that time.
He was one of the best running backs in the league at that point. He was like right where Ezekiel Elliott and Todd Gurley and all those guys are at now, Yeah,
he was right in the prime of his career, and it's unfortunate that he was on such terrible teams in San Francisco a majority of his career. But he still produced no matter how bad those teams were. Right.
I'm definitely happy that they have a good mix of youth and vets. I feel like yesterday they signed that Captain Munnerlyn due to the fact that E.J. Gaines is on IR. And I was like, wow, that's a signing that maybe it might not jump out at you on game day, but that's one that is just going to continue this trend of the process of what they're trying to build. They're trying to build something from the ground up, from the locker room out to the field, which I think that in my playing experience, despite it being high school or, scholastic sports, whatever you want to call it, that's when we would win, was when we would actually focus on the internal locker room stuff and then bring it out onto the field. And I love what they've been doing these last couple seasons. I think it's going to pay off big time.
Yeah, I think they've set themselves up very well at the running back position to transition and not leave themselves a huge hole to fill.
Right.
When Frank Gore retires, and then eventually, and I hope he retires here as a Bill, when McCoy retires. Because it's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years, but it seems they have set themselves up nice with who they drafted this year and some of the free agent signings that they've made to, hey, once that guy goes, we have someone who's ready to step in line right after them, and we don't have to worry about, hey, there's this huge hole on our roster at running back that we now have to fill because Sean McCoy is no longer here.
Right. And it's funny you say that, too, because you mentioned how you hope McCoy retires here. I have felt like there's been this huge misconception with LaShawn McCoy. It's almost as Buffalo Bills fans don't appreciate the fact that he's still here. They look at his season last year and they're like, wow, he was horrible. He only had 520-some yards. And it's like, there's a lot more to it than that, number one. And number two, I haven't seen his skill set completely decline just yet. Have you?
No, not that I've noticed from being at the games. And you can still see him make a cut that half the rest of the people in the league can't make.
Right. You don't lose that in just a sudden, one day. I think that'll take some time to lose that because it's God-given talent. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I still think he has years left, and I'd hate to see him go and finish his career out someplace else and be successful someplace else.
Right.
I know people have been, harping on trade him away, but what would we feel like if we traded him away to, say, Dallas, because, Ezekiel Elliott's holding out, and he has a successful year? We'd all be kicking ourselves.
Yeah. I know I would be kicking myself, and I would be saying on the show, "Hey, remember when I said don't trade this guy? Just let him. At worst, if they don't want him next year, just let him play out this season. So we don't have any distractions or anything like that hanging over our heads. Focus on the season and put the best players out there. And he's one of the best players, if not the best players, still, in my opinion, on that offense."
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the most dynamic running backs that has played in the last 10 years.
Right.
And the other thing is if you're not going to be able to trade him for much, the return that you're going to get back you're not going to get a LaShawn McCoy back if you trade him away. And if you cut him, then you're just letting anybody in. Who knows? He could go somewhere in the division. So I just don't think he's a player you let walk.
Yeah, that would be terrible, too, to see him play for, like, Miami or New England. Oh, that would not.
Yeah, New England seems to be a place where they sign people like that if they're on the market. So.
Right. People that everybody else thinks are on their way out, but people that are not on their way out. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I definitely have enjoyed this conversation, and I look forward to staying up to date and staying in tune with all the stuff that you guys got going on at Game On Sports and Game On Buffalo. And you also have a podcast. Let the people know where to find it, and let the people know where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is the Encore, !Core podcast by Game On Buffalo. And you can find us on Spotify, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, pretty much anywhere where you can find podcasts, you should be able to get access to us.
Awesome.
Our website is GameOnBuffalo.com. That's where we have all our league registrations. Upcoming August 24th is when our Co-Ed Touch Football League starts.
Nice.
We should be having a run club coming up soon, sometime during the fall. And then right around in October is when our floor hockey league starts. And then our right around, I want to say in January is right around when our pond hockey leagues start, which are at Canal Side. So outside, right behind where the Exploring More Museum is where we play our pond hockey games.
That's awesome. That's so cool, and it's right in the heart of downtown Buffalo. That's really awesome.
It's pretty amazing seeing, just all around that area when you're playing hockey down there, how much it's changed in the last 7 years.
And I really think, I got family in other states and stuff, and they come here and they see it because they're not from here, but they're not from here and they come here and they see it and they're like, but if you're from here and you remember what downtown Buffalo looked like 10 years ago compared to now, I mean, it is beautiful.
Harbor Center was a parking lot.
Right. Right.
It's remarkable how much it has changed since that building went up.
And I'm a big fan of the Labatt House. That place is that's a good spot.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I mean, even seeing that building there, it was like the high temp fabric building, and you'd walk by it when you'd go over to where Morrissey's used to be, and Lager House at 95. I think both of them are changed now, but you'd walk by that building, and someone converted it into something that people can go into, because walking by it, you could just see the, historic nature of it. And, hey, this building is great. Why is it a fabric building? And it was just kind of, just a gap between getting from the stadium over to where all the bars are, where people go before the games. And now to have the Labatt House down there is pretty incredible.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I love it down there, and I don't see myself leaving Western New York anytime soon. And I think the same can be said for yourself as well.
No, I've planted my flag, and I don't think I'm going to go anywhere else.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Tim, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I'm so glad I could get you on. It's been great talking to you about all sorts of stuff, from everything that you've got going on, Game On Buffalo, Game On Sports, the Encore podcast, all the positivity that you've spread throughout the community. I got to tell you, I really appreciate it.
Ryan, thank you so much for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, buddy. We'll definitely do this again.
Yes, absolutely.
All righty, take care. Let's go Buffalo, right?
Yes, go Bills.
Go Bills, go Sabres, too. Got to hold on hope.
Yes, go Sabres.
Take care, buddy.
Thank you.
Join the takeover. Follow me on Twitter at Ryan Thomas Take. That was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm Ryan Thomas. Take care.